the I Like Wrestling podcast.
You see what I did there?
Are you gonna start?
Oh, yeah.
Are you real right now?
The greatest general manager. Jesus. I'll allow it.
That's peon moves.
Yep, I like wrestling.
Greetings. We're coming to you live from the bingo hall at Parts Unknown.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kevin Wood, and I'm joined by...
Roger Adams.
How's it going, Roger?
I'm doing all right, man. It's if you guys aren't aware by now, this is a little bit of a spin-off, so to speak.
You know, we're the core to the Yep I Like Wrestling's Nexus.
Or if you want to go even older school, it's kind of like that time Bobby Heenan had a show for like a couple episodes, like back in the day. Nobody knew what was going on, so this is kind of what this is.
Ah, yes. And we are here to talk about All In, the greatest... What would you say? Would you say it's the... I guess you could say the biggest independent wrestling show in America in almost 20 years.
Easily the biggest show. But anyway, so yeah, going about ourselves really. Again, my name is Roger Adams. I've been, I guess you could say, a lifelong wrestling fan. But I've strayed a little bit, throughout the years. But I mean, I really started watching wrestling when I was 5 with my father. It's I think to this day the only thing we've really fully connected on. But yeah, we would watch Superstars and Wrestling Challenge on Channel 5 in New York City here. 12 p.m. as was the case. And yeah, I remember me and my pops, we actually ended up going to the Curtain Call. Yeah, that infamous house show in '96. And I didn't even realize what I'd been to until years later. It was like, oh my God, I'd been there for history and I didn't remember it. But yeah, so I mean, that kind of strayed away when I got into college. But like around, I'd say the time of the network, I got back into it. It was like the Shield was still quite big at the time, and like I learned about all the new guys like Seth Rollins, and then there was Rusev, and all the new guys, and I kind of round myself back into it. Then I really discovered the indie scene, which is so different compared to WWE, which I personally found out. And so, how about you? How'd you get into this fine sports entertainment?
Well, I think for me, I remember as a child having a cousin who was a big wrestling fan. Who, when I saw The Undertaker and Paul Bearer for the first time when I was 5 years old, I was scared to death and didn't watch it again until I was about 10 years old. Paul Bearer, it wasn't even so much The Undertaker, it was Paul Bearer.
Yeah, he's a creepy looking dude.
Oh, yes, he was. But, I just remember watching it. I had a friend in grade school who was a big fan of it, and he got me into it. I remember the first pay-per-view that I watched was No Way Out 2000. And thinking, I think that was Triple H retired, air quotes, retired Mick Foley on that show.
The first of 15 retirements.
Yeah. And I just remember being like, this is fucking awesome. And, oh, wait, the bad guy actually won that? That guy's actually retiring? Oh, my God, I need to see what's next. And I've pretty much been hooked ever since, and it's been a big part of my life. I remember I started getting into indie wrestling. I would buy Pro Wrestling Illustrated and, would see all these pictures of, I remember like the first time I was aware of indie wrestling, I saw a picture of Superstar Steve Austin.
Superstar Steve Austin
in ECW. And I was kind of aware of what ECW was. And I was just like, oh, wait, Stone Cold was like in another company and stuff like that. Like, who is this? And then from there, that like sort of piqued my interest, and then, following the dirt sheets, following magazines and stuff like that. That's kind of, until a couple of years ago with like the rise of the Bullet Club, that was sort of like my, that's how I followed indie wrestling and stuff.
I was like, when I came back into wrestling, the Bullet Club was in pretty much full swing. This is when AJ Styles was the kingpin.
Yes.
And actually, I managed to meet him when he went to a HOG show in Queens a couple years ago. And actually, I managed to buy a shirt from AJ Styles, and I got a picture with AJ Styles, which is pretty awesome. And I actually met one of the people actually met there. I originally saved from homelessness, and now he's a porn star. But now that's a completely different story, which we'll get into.
That'll be the next podcast.
Maybe, if I remember. But that's an entirely different story. But like even now, like I've photographed a bunch of different indie events. Very small indie events. The last one was at the last HOG show, right, which I actually did for Yep.
Nice.
And even before that, I've done a few other shows. A few shows in Jersey, one show in the Bronx. And if you follow me, on Instagram or Facebook, you can probably take a look at a lot of these pictures. I don't want to toot my own horn. I think I'm pretty decent, but you may think worse or better.
I think you're pretty fucking good, man.
Ooh, thank you.
Yeah. I'm not just saying that either. Sorry, I just pushed the table towards him here. My bad, Roger. I'm not trying to kill you or throw a table at you here.
I was like, well, don't smash a racket because I'll have to dock you for points.
Oh shit. Well, no, it's interesting. I wanted to talk about. You said that 2014 was when you started getting into wrestling, and I feel like that's when, sort of like the era that we're in wrestling, that's like heavily influenced by independent wrestling, kind of started to get into like the swing that it's in now, where you have guys like Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins.
I was like, yeah, you had Mania 30, you had Daniel Bryan.
That
was basically his coming out party.
Yeah, like there was like a whole generation there with Punk and Bryan and stuff, and that was kind of like there was a whole generation there with Punk and Bryan that was kind of like the first wave of these independent guys after a long period in WWE. After Cena and Orton and those guys sort of broke through, that independent stars, guys that came from outside of WWE, started to affect and change the main event scene in WWE.
Right, well, yeah, of course, you have CM Punk, of course, is probably one of the best examples, although not quite one of the best examples in a few ways. He is one of the longest holders of the WWE Championship of the modern era, but I don't think he was ever really given his proper respect.
Yeah, I don't think he ever reached the heights of some of the guys that have come, that he sort of paved the way, that in my opinion, he sort of paved the way for guys like AJ Styles, guys like Seth Rollins, these guys that kind of maybe fit a different mold than what you would expect from a top WWE guy, and guys that really got a chance, main evented WrestleMania and got a chance to kind of get a lot of standout moments. And I feel like the All In show was sort of the culmination of that, and also this revolution on the independent wrestling scene.
I don't know. I definitely do think that's a pretty big point. My feelings about CM Punk after somewhat recent revelations about him, I don't think I'd spit on him if he was on fire. But maybe that's just me. You might feel differently about it. But do you think we should just start go all in on All In?
I think we should go all, as Teddy would say to every Friday night, I think we're ready to go all in.
All right, and I understand that you were actually there at the show.
I was. I traveled to Chicago. While I was out there, I managed to get a deep dish pizza. I saw a couple of friends. Shout out to my friend Sig. I don't know why you got a tongue ring. That's really weird. That's another story for another day.
Clearly.
I went to the show. When I heard about the show, I think that they announced it back in like February or March or something like that.
Yeah, it was quite a few months ago.
Yeah, I was like, I would really like to be a part of this, and I bought tickets the day it came out. That was a nightmare in itself, waiting online for the tickets.
I can imagine.
Yes, and I also am kicking myself that the tickets that I bought weren't that expensive, even though the online process organized and not ideal. But I'm kicking myself that I didn't buy about 8 tickets and then try to scalp them all.
Yeah, you probably would make a nice little handsome profit had you done that.
That would have been pretty tremendous.
I wish I actually had the chance to have been there. A friend of mine was actually selling tickets a couple of days before, but it was a little too short notice, and the flight was going to be insane. And I still have a 9 to 5 I have to worry about, of course.
Yeah. See, that's the problem. That I bought the tickets as soon as they were available, but I didn't buy the flight probably when I should have. I made the trek out to Chicago. I saw a couple friends. I had some deep dish pizza. I saw my friend Sig. Hi, Sig. Tongue rings are weird. that's a story for another day.
I have a question for you, though. Did you bring a bulletproof vest out there while you're in Chicago?
No. I didn't. I didn't bring a bulletproof vest. I didn't go to the rough areas of Chicago.
Okay.
In fact, I went to the nothing areas of Chicago, where if I would got shot, it would have at least meant something. The show was technically not in Chicago. It was in like Schaumburg, which was like 30 miles outside of Chicago. It would be like if they sold a show as being in New York, and I don't know what, like Westchester or something like that,
or like Giant Stadium, or like
Oh yeah. Well, the difference is that with Giant Stadium, I'm under the impression that there's like a direct transportation that goes to that stadium. Correct?
I mean, well, yeah, that is indeed correct.
So there was not that for All In. And there was like I made the mistake of going to downtown Chicago that day and wound up in a situation where I could have either taken my chances on taking like a bus that might have taken an hour, might have taken 2 or 3 hours,
Ooh.
or taking a $50 Uber. So I wound up taking a $50 Uber from downtown Chicago to the show, and it was worth it. But oof.
I mean, both ways.
No. Because I was staying close to it, but my hotel was close to the show because I was like, oh, I'm going to save money and be close to the show. And then completely blew that up by going to downtown Chicago that day. So not the greatest planning on my part.
Okay, I gotcha. All right, so should we get started with the card?
Yes. The show got started with the Briscoe brothers, not related to the original Briscoe brothers, taking on SCU. Frankie Kazarian and Scorpio Sky, making their way into the worst town they have ever been in.
Oh man, the Briscoes, man. I think they've always been controversial for at least a good portion of their careers.
Yes, they have. They have said some stuff on Twitter that I'd rather not repeat, and
to say the least.
Yeah, did not put them in the best light.
Well, when you good old, farming boys, I guess you can only take the farm, out, but so far.
Yeah. Sometimes people live the gimmick a little too much.
I definitely agree with that.
But SCU got the win here. There isn't much to say. This was one of the two matches from I guess it's called like 0 Hour. It's their very polite way of saying pre-show.
0 Hour.
It was the equivalent of Sunday Night Heat back in the day.
It's like those are pretty much like glorified, pre-shows, like a lot of those shows, like before the pay-per-view.
Yeah, I mean, and it wasn't even like the standout match from the pre-show. If we're going to talk about anything, we should talk about the 19-man over-budget battle royal.
Ooh.
One of the best. I've heard a lot of people saying this, and I would agree with this point. One of the best battle royals that I've ever seen, in terms of just like the way that everything was structured, the sequence of events of everything. Roger, what did you think of the match?
I thought it was quite amazing. It's when you have a bunch of people knowing this is going to be an important show. They're going to pull out all the stops to make it be the good match of the night, because no one wants to be like the trash match of one of the best cards ever. In independent wrestling, or at least one of the biggest cards ever. You know what I mean? Yeah.
This reminds me of like in, this will happen sometimes, say in the NFL, where, well, how about we'll do this in the NBA, where a team is, out of the playoffs, and, they sort of have, you would think that they don't have much to play for, but they're playing the Golden State Warriors, or they're playing the Chicago Bulls or the Lakers back in the day. And it's like their chance to stand out. It's their Super Bowl. And that's what it was for a lot of these guys, is it was their WrestleMania. Because, this over-the-budget Battle Royal, like, how many more WrestleMania moments is Billy Gunn going to get to have? How many more is Tommy Dreamer going to have? And not to mention guys like Brian Cage and Flip Gordon and all these other guys that haven't even had a crack at that moment yet.
I mean, for me, even nowadays, like, there's so many new indie guys, it's so hard for me to keep track.
It is.
And it's also pretty hard to keep track of how fast WWE keeps on gobbling them up.
I mean, that's the that's sort of like the fun of like a battle royal like this that you had. You know, this battle royal kind of like was you know, an analogy to the show where you had this like great variety of guys.
Oh yeah, I mean, you have everybody. You got Moose, you got Colt Cabana, we have Jordan Grace.
Jesus.
I mean, Austin Gunn.
You know, again, like I said, Brian Cage and Flip Gordon and
Rocky
Bully
Romero.
Ray. Yeah, just like this amazing variety of guys representing, you know, independent wrestling, representing wrestling outside of WWE. You know, just getting a chance to shine. They did a great job of like allowing them to kind of have those moments.
Oh, no, of course. And I was like, I mean, that's one of the better things about having a show like this, because I'm sure they're giving a little bit of leeway so everybody can get their shine, you know,
Yeah.
quote unquote, get their shit in.
Yeah, exactly. And what did you think of Flip Gordon getting the win here?
Flip Gordon, I mean, he's I don't want to sound all cliche like, but he's a promising young man.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I think he's definitely going to be someone to look out for, you know, someone that WWE is probably going to have their eye on, of course.
Absolutely. Also somebody that thinks the world is flat, which is a little weird. But that's neither here nor there.
That really is neither here nor there.
Have you followed sort of the storylines and stuff from Being the Elite?
I honestly speaking, I haven't quite followed it too much.
So, like, the story with this was essentially that, I guess, Flip Gordon and Cody Rhodes' wife were friends, and Cody was jealous of that, and because of that, there was this whole storyline for the last year on Being Elite, where Cody, the Bucks, Hangman Page, guys like that, essentially would be bullying Flip, and it led to this storyline of how Flip wasn't getting booked for this show. You know, like to the point where they had a tailgate party before the show called the All Out Party because Flip wasn't getting booked on the show. And you know, it's one of those things where it doesn't matter how somebody gets over. I've heard like critiques of this show, and we'll talk about this later, especially when it comes to the Joey Ryan thing, of why what exactly it is that people are getting over with. But does it matter when someone's over?
I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't really understand, you know, it seems like it's very two distinct camps. It's pro-dick and anti-dick.
Yeah. I mean, in this case with Flip Gordon, I was watching the show with a non-wrestling fan who had no idea what the fuck was going on, and it didn't need to. The moment when Flip gets up and tears off the mask was just so exciting, especially being in that arena, that it was great.
Yeah, I can imagine the pop was pretty crazy when that happened, but, you know, it's always a magical thing to see a non-fan, like, attend a show, and then you see, like, the magic, like, in their eyes.
Yes. It was great. Matches that weren't so great, the first match of, I guess what you would say technically would be the main show or the pay-per-view or what have you. Matt Cross defeated Maxwell Jacob Friedman. And I know that Matt Cross is kind of a sensation, real popular in sort of the ranks of indie wrestling fans. But this match kind of, especially considering the way the show ended, wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world if these guys had been part of the Battle Royal instead of actually being on the show.
I mean, it's kind of like, you know, what I was saying before. You don't want to be known as the guys that had the weakest match, you know, one of the greatest cards, you know, to ever really have known, and that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, it was the one thing on this show that, to me, kind of doesn't stand out. Yeah, there isn't really much else to say to it. Moving on, we have Christopher Daniels defeating Stephen Amell, which again, the person that I was watching the show with was like, wait a second, that's that cute guy on that show that I used to watch.
I used to watch.
I was not watching the show with Teddy. No, he is not the one who was saying that.
I was like, well, you know, however you want to pay for flights, you know, that's your own personal business. I'm no snitch, you know.
Roll Tide.
No, but this was actually a pretty fun match, pretty amazing match. You know, I would have never have thought that Stephen Amell was just a mere actor.
Other than maybe Lawrence Taylor versus Bam Bam Bigelow, is there a more impressive example of a non-wrestler wrestling a big singles match on a big card like this, because Stephen Amell is not a wrestler. He's an actor. He's had one match in WWE that was a tag team match where I think he only had like a handful of spots.
And I was like, yeah, I was actually there for that one. It's like you could see Neville kind of encouraging him. It was like, oh, come on, wrestle.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I watched that. I watched that a couple days before this show, and I was just like, okay, this will be interesting.
Yeah, I remember him kind of blowing up pretty fast in that match.
Yes, and there was a couple points there where he was doing moves, and I was just like, oh, don't hurt yourself, Christopher Daniels. Also, shout out to Christopher Daniels, managing to turn in like a good match with somebody who can't. Isn't this, back in the day, people talked about Ric Flair could have a good match with a broom. Isn't this like in the same ballpark as that?
I definitely think so, but I'm pretty sure Stephen Amell probably had a lot more training between the first time and the last time he's been in the ring. So I mean, but I'm pretty sure that he did a pretty good amount of carrying him, because if you make him look good, everybody looks good.
Yeah, and can I just say, Stephen Amell in the ring already better than Baron Corbin.
That's a low blow.
Moving on here, we had what I thought was kind of the underrated match of the show, which was Tessa Blanchard defeating Chelsea Green, Madison Rayne, and Britt Baker.
Now, I really felt that all the women in this match really impressed, but my God, like, I've heard a lot about Tessa Blanchard. I mean, I know she's on Impact, but I don't live in the Impact watching home. At least not yet. I mean, I've been hearing about very great things. I've been very critical about them in the past.
You're not one of the dozens?
I am not yet one of the dozens. But Tessa Blanchard, oh my, like she's the goddamn future. She's amazing.
That's another thing, was the person I was watching it with, again, a non wrestling fan as you could be, turning me and being like, why is that person not in WWE? Clearly has the look, clearly has the size, and I'm not saying that in a like a sexual way or anything, but I just think that
we all want to Dave Meltzer this up.
Oh, fuck Dave Meltzer. Shout out to Pritchard, Bischoff, pretty much every guest that Conrad Thompson has that's like, fuck Dave Meltzer.
I mean, well, a lot of those guys is a little personal. I mean,
well, yeah. Well, also fuck Dave Meltzer, because like right now that guy deserves a fuck Dave Meltzer.
I mean, I wouldn't go so far to say that. I mean, I think he definitely said some things he shouldn't have.
Yeah. But getting back to this match, this brings up like an interesting point we talked about the other day, where one of the things that's been interesting with this sort of revolution in independent wrestling, it hasn't necessarily included like a woman's aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, I do find it a little bit weird and intriguing that it took ROH a very long time to set up a women's division and a women's belt, which I think they could have had like a good lead time. I think they had at least a good 3 or 4 years where they could have introduced that and had that been like the hottest thing. Yeah. Otherwise, since Joshi's in Japan.
Yeah. Well, and that too is that, and like in New Japan, they don't even have like a women's.
Also true.
It's the rare example of Ring of Honor actually kind of following WWE. It feels like a lot of the time it works in the inverse.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's exciting, but that's the area. Like watching someone like Tessa Blanchard, part of me was like, oh, that'd be great if she winds up in WWE or NXT.
I was like, yeah, but then what's gonna happen? She's gonna be like another one of the girls in about 2 to 3 months.
Yes, exactly. And this is a conversation that when people talk to me about people in WWE. Because people just come up off the street and they're just like, hey, Kevin, who do you want to see in WWE outside of WWE? It happens all the time. Yeah. But when I think of that subject, the first person that I think of is someone like Sasha Banks, where in WWE, superstar and everything, a lot of exposure, but also just like one of the girls, you know, just like another person there, and the independent scene might have a chance to actually really like stand out, have a chance to, you know, maybe she would hurt herself from losing the platform of WWE, but then what she would lose there, she would gain, you know, just having a chance to stand out and having a chance to be a star on her own.
But the danger is with that. I mean, I think she would definitely be an asset to the independent side of wrestling things. And I don't know if you've known this, but like she's made a bunch of appearances over at the HOG, which is also a wrestling school in Queens.
Didn't she get started? Wasn't that like her
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if she necessarily got started there, but it's definitely one of the places she originally trained before she got to WWE.
Yes. But I mean, and that's just like a hypothetical, but it's just to say that with like the revolution in independent wrestling and stuff, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is I wish that there was like a women's revolution were more of an aspect of it.
Right, but I think the danger of that is also that a lot of those guys will probably see that as like a demotion.
Yes.
So they might not be as motivated to work as hard, you know, if they do end up in the indies.
Yeah, and that's a tough road, because not everybody can necessarily be like a, you know, obviously like a Cody, Drew McIntyre.
Yeah, because that's all like really grinding. Like, I mean, I've been privy to you know, some of the indies communiques, and it's always interesting to see wrestlers submit their resumes, and I didn't even know what a wrestling resume was until, you know. And it's like, yeah, so they'll have like clips of their matches, they'll say who they worked with, who they're trained by, so it's like a real resume.
Yeah.
Just like, you know, they send out to all the indies, you know, just, hey, I'm willing to be here for a hot dog and a smile, but just let me work.
Yeah, I guess that's like the thing, right, is that it demands a certain hustle from the guys involved. And
exactly, like you always have to be like grinding.
Yeah, you know, and it's tough too, because if you have a wife, if you have kids, you have whatever, that guaranteed money is nice.
It's like, yeah, I mean, well, then, imagine like a retail company is like, well, you know, we'll pay you X amount no matter what. If you're only there 1 day a week, if they're only there 5 days a week, you're guaranteed X paycheck.
And it's tough, because it's like not everyone can take that chance, you know. And in the next match, we're actually talking about not just a guy who took that chance, the guy in Cody. I keep wanting to say Cody Rhodes, but technically,
it's just Cody.
Right now, it's just, as they would say in New Japan, Cody. What do you think of this match?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I don't really think much of Cody Rhodes as an overall wrestler. I mean, he's very serviceable in the ring. He has a very WWE style, and I think that shows no matter what. I mean, I've seen him in matches with, what's his name? He just actually got into the E about last TakeOver, actually.
Not Matt Cross, but I know who you're talking about, and I can't.
Matt Riddle.
Matt Riddle, yes.
Yeah, Matt Riddle. I actually saw him in the match with Matt Riddle, and I thought I was way more impressed with Matt Riddle than I was of Cody. But I mean, and then you also have Nick Aldis. I mean, I'm honestly speaking not too familiar with him. I thought he also turned a very serviceable performance. But I kind of had the idea that this was kind of like Cody booking himself to win the NWA championship on top of, you know, his father winning the championship, and then the biggest independent show in 20 years, and, you know, it kind of all makes sense to kind of book it that way.
I mean, I will say, being in the building, especially for the entrances, watching Cody walk out with DDP, with Tommy Dreamer, with Glacier.
Glacier.
Oh, shout out to Glacier. Good Lord. Like, I'm looking at the guys that he has with him, and I guess one of them was like his father-in-law and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, DDP, like, that's cool, whatever.
Yeah.
Is that the guy who played the Sub-Zero ripoff in WCW? But a great touch. If WWE is going to steal one, if I could pick one aspect of this for WWE to steal, it would be walking out to the ring with a posse, with an entourage.
You know what? WWE used to do pomp and circumstance so well. And then, like, over the last, I want to say, 10, 15 years, they kind of forgot about a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine, and it's an interesting thing, too, because it's sort of like that's the Goldberg entrance. But can you imagine, Roman Reigns is walking to the ring, and behind him is the Usos and his dad and Rikishi and, Haku.
I was like, I don't care who you are. They'll get a pop out of anybody.
That would get a huge, him or, WWE has all these legends, and they kind of don't do anything with them. I don't want to turn this into talking about what WWE should do show, but I just, if I could pick one thing from this show, one single aspect, big matches, guys are walking to the ring, and you have an entourage behind them, and it's an entourage that means something too.
Yeah.
Because even on the Nick Aldis side, walking out with Jeff Jarrett, he's walking out with Tim Storm, who's the guy that he beat to win that championship.
I mean, well, those are pretty important names, regardless if you like them or not.
Daivari walked out to take a bump. I mean, that was really his whole reason being out there, taking the bump.
I'm pretty sure he got paid a decent amount of money to take that bump.
Yeah. Probably better than when he was at the Greatest Royal Rumble earlier this year and almost got stabbed in the ring or whatever.
Oh yeah, he was doing a lot of quote unquote controversial things in the Middle East.
Oh,
I mean, having a swig of alcohol at the wrong times is controversial, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, but interesting match. The spot in the middle of the match where everything sort of stopped was. I don't know what the experience was like watching on TV. I felt like in the arena everything sort of stopped. There's a wrestling bump where everybody gets a breather, and then there's a thing kind of continues on and on for. It felt like 5 minutes. I don't know, but it was like a full stop, and everybody in the arena was kind of just like, what? Like, did he need help bleeding? Was it fake blood? Like, what was going on? I
mean, it's been a while since I've seen the show, but the way I remember it, it didn't really come off all, like that. It looked like it was kind of like there might have been some difficulty, with the blade, but it didn't stop us. It's just I don't think most people, that don't really know the business would have picked up on it. But me, I could tell you most matches whenever people blade. I mean, even a lot of times I'm wrong, but yeah, it's kind of obvious when it happens if you know what to look for.
And what was your thoughts on the end of this match?
I mean, I thought it was a well-fought match between the both of them. I thought it was, if you ask me, it's probably like about 3-star match if you want to stretch it out, 3.5. I mean, I thought the end of the match slightly overbooked, but otherwise, it was all about the coronation.
Yeah, and the end of the match kind of felt like an inevitability, but I mean, it was what with those entrances. It reminded me of John Cena versus Rusev a couple of years ago. Rusev comes out in the tank.
Oh yeah.
John Cena comes out with the video package playing Ronald Reagan and all these other guys. And me as a lifelong Democrat, even I'm just like, fuck yeah, John Cena, fucking beat USA.
Oh man, that tank was so epic though, man.
Oh, it was, man.
That tank was ridiculous.
Shout out to Rusev's tank. That's not a. Oh, if only Teddy were here. Next match, motherfucking moment of the night. Hangman Page versus Joey Janela. First off, great match.
That match was bananas. Absolutely crazy.
Joey Janela, stop taking bumps with your neck. Seriously, all of independent. If there is one thing, I was at the New Japan show in San Francisco over the summer. Where I think it was Dragon Lee against, I can't even remember. It was the fucking match of the night that night. But it was the same match where essentially a guy broke his neck because he got thrown neck first onto the mat.
Oh, I actually remember seeing that live. I was like, oh, that's a surefire way to break someone's neck. And then next day, oh yeah, his Hiromu's neck is broken.
Yeah, and it's like, just stop with the neck bumps. Stop with the pile drivers.
I mean, honestly speaking, like, a bunch of people over the last, like, 5 to 10 years have had to retire for neck and head-related injuries.
Yes. Daniel Bryan almost essentially had to retire for both of them.
Yeah. Edge.
Page.
Paige.
Steve Austin.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, how I feel like we lost a whole act of Steve Austin's career because of his neck injury.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing them doing, I can't even tell you what the move is, but it's he's Hangman's got him hanging backwards and they're jumping onto a ladder. They're going neck first. They clearly know what they're doing, but then it's also just like, stop with the neck bumps, man. But besides that, great match. It was fun seeing Joey Janela live. It's the first chance that I've gotten to see him. And great match. Do you have any other thoughts on this?
I mean, I thought there was a lot of crazy spots in that match. I mean, as much as I always like to see people just go all out,
or in this case, all in.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe because I'm older, just looking back on the old, Attitude Era footage, like a lot of those chair shots, they were gratuitous and they were over the top, and they were like looking at them back today, it's just like, oh my God, they were just hitting each other with metal chairs directly in the head as hard as they possibly could.
I mean, I was watching the clip the other day. I was reading Brandon Stroud on uprocks.com, and he does analysis of old WWE.
Yeah.
And he's talking about the chair shots that The Rock was giving Ken Shamrock around WrestleMania 14.
No. Matter of fact, think of the chair shots he gave Mankind in that I Quit match.
Oh, my God.
And especially on top of that, he even tell him that he was going to bash him in the head with the chair that many times.
Yeah, I remember hearing something where someone was like, oh, we didn't know that the chair shots would do. It's like, you didn't think that hitting somebody, that like a bodybuilder hitting someone as hard as they could in the face with a metal object.
And that's like, if you're in the arena, even if you're in the rafters, you could hear that.
It's just like, I just watched some of stuff like that from back in the day, and I'm just like, oh, CTE, it's dark, but sometimes you'll see shit that like Chris Benoit did, and you're just like, which one of these was the straw that broke the camel's back? Whoa. This podcast just took a very dark turn.
Yes, it did.
Speaking of dark turns, Roger, what are your thoughts of the? So Hangman Page defeats Joey Janela, but that's not the story here. Roger, what are your thoughts of the post-match events of Hangman Page versus Joey Janela?
Well, geez, man, that was a lot going on. That's a lot going on. We had a lot of dicks.
All the dicks. Shout out to Teddy. All the dicks, man.
No, that was a little bit of a gratuitous shout out.
Holy shit. Can we guess what was his favorite moment of the night?
I was like, I would imagine when all the dicks rose.
But this is a legitimate question, because to me, again, watching it with a non-WWE fan.
Yeah, I would imagine this would be probably the hardest thing to explain.
She dug it. She was like, this is amazing. She doesn't even know wrestling, and when the guys came out, she was just like, are they making fun of The Undertaker? And I was just like, yeah.
I was like, no, shout out to The Undertaker. That's how vast his reach is, that non-fans know who The Undertaker is enough to understand a reference to him.
This is a serious question. Do you think The Undertaker actually saw that? Do you think, because you know that this show is on WWE's radar. Can you imagine Vince McMahon sitting in Titan Tower?
Honestly speaking, I don't know. If I was The Undertaker, I would probably not be watching all the matches all over the place, because even Kanye West said famously that famous hip hop producer. He's like, I don't listen to rap.
Yeah, and it's true.
So I was like, I can't imagine, someone of the Undertaker's age being through everything he's done, like sitting down watching matches all the time. And I would have to assume that he missed it.
This is the question I have about this is, like I said, the person that I watched the show with thought this was one of probably the three most, her three favorite parts of that whole show. She thought it was fucking amazing. Had never seen any of the Joey Ryan act before. Joey Ryan, not necessarily a friend of the pod, but friend of the Yep I Like Wrestling community. He's hosted at least one event there.
I was like, yeah, he definitely has. I was actually there when we dropped him off. I photographed him a couple of times for an indie that, technically speaking, got renamed. But I don't know. I believe they're called Now You Create. I just want to give them a shout out as well. They've been very good to let me photograph them for many times. But
shout out to those guys. Also, shout out to my friend from high school, Boris, who actually got dick flipped by Joey Ryan. I'm very jealous.
Oh my.
He, I guess he lent X-Pac a T-shirt for a wrestling event or something, and his only request was, "Can I get dick flipped by Joey Ryan?" He got to get dick flipped by Joey Ryan, man. It was fucking crazy. So shout out to Boris, man. Good for you. But I've heard other people, as much as I enjoyed this match and I enjoy the Joey Ryan character, I have heard a lot of critique about this, that this was, for lack of a better term, indie wrestling bullshit.
I can understand that critique about it, but quite honestly, I mean, there's always going to be, I think, room for all types of wrestling, even to this day. I mean, if you really want to go back, even in the golden age of wrestling itself, there's this clip that I actually discovered. It's Lunar Wrestling. Basically, you have these guys that on this platform, it shoots them up in the air about 10 feet, and then they land in the ring to get head scissored. And then it's another group shoots up in the air. And this is a form of wrestling entertainment. So before we want to go back, to judge, the dear friend of the podcast here, let's go back. Just go back into wrestling, and then you'll discover some really disturbing facts and figures about it.
Yeah, and I can definitely understand, if I was trying to get investors for this show and I was sending this tape out, I probably would edit that part out of it. But also it was entertaining. And is there other than, I can understand for decency stuff and not necessarily liking the content, but other than that, is there a difference between this and The Undertaker ascending to heaven, or Undertaker sending Edge to hell?
No, it's all pretty much on the same scope.
Yeah, we had the Attitude Era of Vince McMahon having guys kiss his ass, and
literally.
Yeah,
And it's like we had we had his own daughter strapped up on a quote unquote symbol.
Well, I mean, there was that. There was also, he had a match with his daughter. There was a rejected storyline where he was going to be the father of his daughter's child.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in just WWE history that's just a story.
Yeah, and we're not even talking. I mean, oh my God, TNA and stuff at the beginning of its run, WCW at the end of its run.
Yeah,
even stuff from ECW, it's part of the wrestling variety show, and if you liked it, great. It's okay. There's other stuff to like on the show.
And the thing you have to understand about wrestling history is that it's always been sort of attached to a circus. I mean, that's the way it originally started. So it's always going to be carny style thinking,
yes,
and carny style attractions.
It's interesting. The next match kind of embodies that too, where the tagline on paper is Jay Lethal defeats Flip Gordon.
But that's definitely
that's not telling the whole story.
Just reading that doesn't tell you anything. But the match, if you watch the match, has been way different.
What did you think of this match?
I always enjoy when he pretends to be the Macho Man, Randy Savage, because that's just always ridiculously entertaining.
Yeah. Macho Man.
The Macho Man. Oh, yeah.
Black machismo. Yeah.
I thought it was nice. I thought it was a lot of fun. Again, I can understand the critique, and I would actually agree. I would defend the Joey Ryan moment. I would defend this one a little less, where somebody was like, they are taking the Ring of Honor title and they're kind of putting it in a comedy match. I don't necessarily agree, but I can understand that. I can definitely understand that perspective. It was a fun match, but I can understand, and it was also sort of a necessary moment too, because so much, especially following this match, so much of the card was very serious.
Yeah.
And like I said, especially the rest of the card, and you need that variety. You need that sort of breather. But I can understand the critique of, like, I don't know if we want to necessarily make the equivalent of the cool-down match the match also for the Ring of Honor World Championship.
I mean, well, that's true. That's a true thought to be thought of. But also, ROH is... It's really not that hot as it used to be.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of the guys from, ROH are moving on to WWE or to other indies for the time being. And
Yeah.
I mean, the last I heard, who was the last champion for ROH?
I mean, now it's Jay Lethal. I
Yeah.
think before it was Dalton Castle.
Dalton Castle. I thought that was actually a pretty bold move to give him the championship, but
Yes.
I didn't really hear much after he won it.
Yeah, and before that it was Cody, and I thought he got a way shorter run than one I expected him to get, and two I think he sort of deserved to get. It's Ring of Honor sometimes reminds me of like the Cleveland Cavs with LeBron James. LeBron James in this analogy being the Bullet Club, and Ring of Honor has had a lot of standout moments over the last couple. It's sort of struggled to define itself outside of that. I feel like in a lot of ways, it sort of stands tall on the Bullet Club's shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's dependent on a lot of Bullet Club involvement, a lot about NJPW involvement as well.
Yes.
That's a thing that's definitely been bolstering for the last 2 to 3 years, in my opinion.
I mean, I've heard people talk about maybe like the wise move to do is New Japan and Ring of Honor come to some kind of like an official agreement or some sort of official merger. Because I think that New Japan, even though it's not a domestic product and stuff, I think that they've done a better job of sort of defining themselves outside of the Bullet Club. I think that a show like this was really great in terms of being like, all right, we're going to take this brand that the Bullet Club and these guys, and we're going to use them to sort of give a rub to other guys as well, to guys like Nick Aldis, to guys like Pentagon, to guys like, to like Okada and stuff like that. But I wish that Ring of Honor would do more, try to do a better job of that.
I was like, well, yeah, I mean, we have that G1 show coming up real soon.
Yes, we do. God, it's it's 6 months. 6 months down the line.
Yeah, I got to get around to getting my tickets for that.
Yeah, it's. I looked online earlier today. It's there's a few tickets left. But if you want to get nice tickets, you're gonna have to go through good old StubHub.
It's like, yeah, and if you know someone from Japan, I don't know if that would even work, but maybe you might send somebody an email, or I don't know. There probably is no way for you to get one without paying an arm and a leg.
Definitely, at least it's gonna take a premium. But I will say, I went to a New Japan show over the summer, and it's worth it. It's a lot of fun. And
like that show is history breaking to say the least.
Absolutely. Here's a question.
Sure.
On that show, do you think we'll see Kenny Omega on?
I think so.
He had his match here with on my sheet. He's listed as Penta L0M, also known as Pentagon Jr., also known as Penta. He has a bunch of names.
Pentagraph,
Pentagonian, Pentagon Industries, the Pentagon thing you see on buildings around New York.
Yeah, it's like he's tied up for a whole bunch of Pentagons, but anyway.
Pentagon, the dude from TNA and Lucha Underground. Pretty fun match. I feel like if I'm Kenny Omega, it's tough because you're essentially the big hitter of this group, right? You're sort of like the most renowned. you're fucking Mr. Six Stars in the Tokyo Dome and everything like that.
Yeah.
But he's also kind of done everything he can do on the indies. You know, he's won the he's won the IWGP title. He's had this amazing series of matches with Okada that are almost essentially like renowned as like the modern like Flair versus Steamboat. He's done everything that he can do, and as much as I don't want him to go to WWE because I think he would just be another guy in WWE, I don't know what value there is for him to stick around the indies.
I mean, that's also true, but I can't really see him being happy unless he has like complete and total control in WWE, which I don't think they'll ever give him. I mean, but if they do manage to give him that, I think he'll take the ball and he'll run with it.
And it leaves this group in a tough position, you know, because every time, you know, the Bullet Club's formed by Finn Balor, and he leaves, and then they take AJ Styles immediately comes in and takes the group to new heights, and you know, I wasn't even following at that point, and I knew that AJ Styles was in the Bullet Club and he was fucking killing it. And he leaves, and then Kenny sort of remakes the Bullet Club in his image, and you know, and it's not just him; it's the Bucks, and it's been a team effort.
It's like it definitely has changed up since AJ was manning it.
Yes, you know, I think that the group sort of went from when they were with AJ, they were sort of like a throwback to the original NWO and stuff like that. Yeah. With Kenny, I think that they've sort of become this group that is focused on building themselves on social media and doing all these other things. And it's a question that I have is, like, I think that they could use him greatly, but I also think it wouldn't shock me if January comes around and he's in the Royal Rumble, because I don't know what else he has to prove. You know, he's got this match with Jericho on the Cruise coming up.
Oh yeah.
We'll be doing some sort of a show on that once we figure out how the hell to watch that.
Yeah.
Roger, you don't want to pay hundreds of dollars to go on a cruise with a bunch of other wrestling fans?
That would depend if they're female wrestling fans and if they're hot, because you know, as much as I love fellow wrestling fans, I don't want to smell that neckbeard, you know, aroma everywhere I go.
I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of 1.5%ers.
I suppose you'd be right about that.
Yes. But getting back to this, what was your thoughts on the match and the run-in at the end from Chris Jericho?
Oh, man, it's Pentagon Jr. Well, there's already whispers of him being signed to the E,
yes,
which more or less may or may not be confirmed as of not press time, but definitely as of record time.
Yes.
I thought the match was amazing. Kenny Omega, I mean, he's definitely one of the best wrestlers in the world. I mean, well-deserved, well-earned. Pentagon Jr. is certainly up there. I mean, if you've never seen his work on Lucha Underground or anywhere else for that matter, he's a madman.
Yes.
He's a goddamn madman.
I just getting to see him. It's the first time I've seen him live. A lot of fun. And the can I just say, just from besides like the moment being amazing at the end with Chris Jericho running in, can I say how amazing it is that Chris Jericho, you have a guy involved in the early 90s in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, gets his start with guys like Kane and Lance Storm and stuff like that.
Yeah, way back.
Was part of ECW. Was in terms of guys that passed through ECW, a pretty notable guy in ECW. I mean, he was only there for a couple months. He's the first guy to kick out of Taz's suplex and everything like that. Goes to WCW. You know, the Chris Jericho in 1998, Monday Night Jericho, whatever stuff was amazing.
I mean, that's all classic. Yeah. All of it.
You know, and then goes to WWE, is a part of the Attitude Era. Not necessarily the Attitude Era that is remembered as fondly. You know, I think that people sort of remember late 97 through summer of 99. But I think that the best time, the best at least WWE product that I ever saw was WWE in the year 2000. I think that it was just like this apex of like all these guys reaching their creative apex. It was all these guys reaching their physical, their creative prime, their physical prime, all this other stuff. He's a part of that.
I mean, this is what a lot of wrestling fans mean by the good old days.
Yes.
A lot of wrestling fans are old enough to remember watching the Attitude Era live. So many stories used to culminate just so many different ways. Like even the top guys, the mid guys, even the lower card guys, they all had something to do.
But the difference between, we see earlier on the show, Tommy Dreamer, who's sort of there as a, hey, remember when? Billy Gunn, definitely there as a, Hurricane, definitely there as a, hey, remember when?
Definitely.
Bully Ray to an extent. I'm a huge fan of his character, but is there kind of as, I'm Bully Ray once upon a time of the Dudley Boys, and also once upon a time of TNA. Chris Jericho is the one of these guys, and even of like the sort of legends in WWE, who's not living off of his greatest hits.
Yeah, I mean, I think what happened was, Jericho spent a lot of time, he went back to WWE after a little bit of hiatus. And, he got kind of bored of just, playing with the same people. I guess WWE couldn't port the guys he wanted to play with fast enough. So I was just like, screw it. I'll just go to Japan. I'll just pop up. I might win an Intercontinental Championship. Yeah. I mean, me personally, I've always kind of felt that, over the last few years, he's been kind of more or less a shill.
I could see that.
It's like, he always runs and talks about his conversations with Vince, and it's like Vince seemingly not giving a shit about anything that's going on in the wrestling world. It's like, hey, it's like Saturday's a bad time to run a show. It's like they should have talked to me first.
Yeah, I mean, it's I forgot what point I was going to make. So, note, it's an hour, 1 minute. Yeah, I mean, his whole appearance on this show was essentially to shill his cruise.
It's like, well, isn't the rumor Kenny Omega versus Chris Jericho on that cruise?
I think that shit's been booked. You've got
in international waters.
You've got that, and then you've also got the Bullet Club of Cody, Kenny Omega, and I want to say, I think it's Marty Scurll against the Bucks of Jericho or Y2 Jackson, depending on what you want to call them. And that's what the T-shirt says, so that's what the graphic says, so that's what the match is.
Yeah.
I just think it was great seeing Jericho there, seeing him involved in all these other things. In ECW in his prime, in WCW during the Monday Night Wars, part of the Attitude Era, part of the era after it. He was part of the ECW One Night Stand show, and he's part of this.
Yeah, he has what a lot of us youngsters refer to as juice.
Oh, yes. That is a very accurate way to describe Chris Jericho. Speaking of guys that had juice, what I thought was the match of the night, Okada versus Marty Scurll.
I mean, Okada's always a joy to watch. Marty Scurll is definitely he's definitely coming to his own over the last, I would say, year or so.
Now, I was saying the thing about Kenny possibly going to WWE, and we're trying to make this as much as possible a non-WWE show, even though it's impossible because WWE is the end-all be-all in the industry, and it's the inevitable question. And someone like Kenny I could see being in WWE. Somebody who I wouldn't want to see in WWE is Marty Scurll.
I mean, well, Marty Scurll definitely. I think if this is the Attitude Era, he would already be hired because he definitely has the personality. He has the, I dare say, even the scruples.
I would love to see him on SmackDown in 2002 with Billy Kidman and Rey Mysterio and all those guys, but that's not going to happen, and I don't want to see him on the pre-show at WrestleMania with 100 people in the audience. I think he's great, and I think that where he's at is perfect for him.
Man, that pre-show 2 years ago at SummerSlam, that was one of the weirdest things I've ever watched. Yeah. I was like, that's one. Well, this last SummerSlam and the last SummerSlam, the only two SummerSlams I personally didn't go to, but yes, I've been to all the takeovers.
Yes,
but even watching that match, I was at a work trip actually. I was in the hotel room watching it, and it's like, wow, they're really gonna have this match of like 13 people in the audience. That's just bizarre.
Yeah, it's.
And I was like, you could see the wrestlers like extremely like dejected about the whole thing.
Can you imagine, like, you spend your whole life, like, trying to get to WWE, and then you get there, and then you're on 205 Live, which is a completely redundant show. And I'm not saying in terms of what's actually on the show, folks. What I'm saying is the way it's positioned in the company. By the mere fact that the show is on the network and gets no promotion, little promotion.
Yeah, you don't even see it promoted really on Raw or SmackDown all that much. You might, well, what we've been seeing now is people, popping up, on like, Raw and SmackDown, just like,
As
I believe
managers.
Leo Rush is managing, what's his name?
Bobby Lashley.
Bobby Lashley. He's managing Bobby Lashley now, which is, you wouldn't have known that unless you, went to WWE.com. It was like, oh, he's managing him now.
I mean, that might work. I loved Bobby Lashley in TNA with MVP as his like player coach manager.
I mean, MVP is actually one of my sleeper wrestlers. I always really appreciated him when he was in the.
Yeah, me too. I was actually really bummed that he wasn't a part of the show.
Matter of fact, isn't he not the first IWGP Intercontinental Champion?
Maybe I'm not 100% sure. This would be a. We need a stat guy Greg on this show.
All right, matter of fact, let me ask Google. Google beats Stat Guy Greg any day of the week.
You're gonna throw that into your
Who was
your
the
Google
first
machine?
IWGP Intercontinental Champion?
According to Wikipedia, Chris Jericho is the current champion in his first reign.
Not the
beating
current
Tetsuya
champion,
Naito
Google.
and Dominion.
Not the current champion.
Do we have a third member of this podcast now?
I guess, well, digitally, yes. Okay, yeah. So, matter of fact, yeah, the first champion is MVP.
Wow.
First champion is MVP.
Good. That's awesome. I wish that we saw more of him.
Me too, man.
I think there was this whole thing a couple of years ago. He was going to be on Lucha Underground, and then he got fired off of it because he accidentally spoiled something. I think that MVP was great. I think he's one of those guys that will never get a chance to truly stand out in WWE, and I wish that we saw more of him outside of WWE.
Like, if he was in like NXT as like a manager, I think would be cool.
Maybe he could. We'll talk about MVP on a future podcast.
Yes.
I don't know how to transition from that to the main event.
Let's just do it. Let's just do a
feel
hard transition.
I feel like we're running out of time, just like the main event of the show was running out of time.
Oh man.
What were your thoughts on the greatest we're short for time match that you've ever seen in your entire life?
I've never seen anything like it in terms of modern wrestling.
I remember going to Raw this year, Raw 25 or whatever, and they had the match where Undertaker was coming out in 2 minutes, and they literally sent out a cruiserweight match to kill time to like warm up the crowd right before it happened. That's what this match kind of felt like, but if they had like 10 minutes to do it, and it was great. Getting to see the Young Bucks live in person, I've gotten to see them a couple times this year. A lot of fun, highly recommended. What are your thoughts on the show?
The Young Bucks they're the best tag team in the world. I mean, I don't know how someone could watch a Young Bucks match and not say that. I mean, unless it's like your hate for super kicks, but like they have very sound matches, very good matches.
Yeah, and I think it was a great way to end the show.
So yeah, I mean, although it was quite rushed.
Oh my God!
It was off when we were home. By the time the ref said hit 3, show was off. I was like, there's always, any Young Bucks match, it's always going to be pretty spot heavy. So regardless,
Yeah.
I was like, but I don't know, man. Just like the whole uniqueness of that main event, especially the way it came off on TV, it was just kind of bizarre just when they just cut off that way.
Yeah, I still haven't seen the TV feed because, I remember watching Marty and Okada and seeing somebody running from the back to ringside, clearly telling them something, which must have been, hey, hurry up, we got to go. And you could tell that the main event was just like, oh, okay, like, let's go.
If I actually heard correctly, I believe the Okada match actually went over by like 10, 15 minutes.
So this has been like the sort of the dirt sheet rumor for the last week or two is that match ran over. Now there's reports that maybe it was more of a combination of all the matches beforehand. You know, a minute here, a minute there.
I was like, it was probably like they probably just instructed them, hey, have your best match out there. You know, if you go over a minute or two, it's fine. And then, you know, ended up kind of biting them.
And I think that the Okada Marty match, the referee wasn't like normally a referee, so there's a chance that you know, the signals to him whatever weren't working, and they thought, oh, we're fine. Oh shit, we went 5 to 10 minutes over what we should have.
Yeah.
This was an amazing show. Felt like, you know, a lot of people are comparing it to WCW stuff. I felt like I was watching sort of like the modern equivalent of ECW One Night Stand or ECW Barely Legal, the first ECW pay-per-view.
I don't know. To me, it didn't really feel of any of those shows. It definitely felt like a monster all of its own. And I mean, I believe after the show, they said they were going to stick around. They weren't going to all race to a company, you know, unless it was all together.
Yes, unless they were all in. Sorry, folks, that's a dad joke.
I mean, but like, yeah, I mean, it's a very groundbreaking show. I'd be sad and disappointed if they didn't decide they want to do at least one or two more.
Yeah, it would feel like if this was the only one, this would be a thing years from now. We would talk about like, man, like that was the only one that they did.
I mean, well, hey, if they get the right backers, I mean, this could be like its own, you know, indie. It could be its own company, perhaps.
Yeah, I guess like that's like a good way to sort of bring the show full circle. What do you want if, you know, 18 months to 3 years from now, what would you want to look back on and see that the show was the start of? Like, where do you want the show to eventually lead to?
What I want to have the show lead to is definitely like a major challenger to the E. Because, quite frankly, I mean, all of wrestling needs it.
Yes. You know, I agree. What I think it would be a challenger to, I don't know if it would lead to something that would necessarily challenge WWE in like a financial way or a corporate way or anything like that. But what I would hope is that it would become, one, like an influence on WWE, forcing people there to sort of change their vision of what wrestling is supposed to be in the 21st century. And the other thing is that it would sort of usher in like an era of more independence for the actual wrestlers, you know, having more options of places to go, being able to support yourself with an income stream outside of WWE.
I well, that was what was so devastating about the loss of WCW in the first place, because, you know, if you was unhappy in WWE, you could always like switch to WCW and vice versa. You know, of course, you had many people that didn't want to leave their respective companies,
yes.
But I mean, it happened all the times where, you know, Jeff Jarrett would bounce back, you know, between WWE, WCW.
Yeah, you know, and then it's like having a WCW, having an ECW, having another perspective out there. You know, there were so many. I felt like Steve Austin and Mick Foley and guys like that were able to sort of like hone their craft and better themselves as artists. Because that's what wrestlers are. They're artists in somewhere like ECW, and that's what I would hope to see from this sort of independent wrestling boom that we're in. Roger, do you have any last thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, I really do hope, you know, it can be an influence on WWE, but I mean, I quite honestly think that it's not going to be. There's a lot of old timers that are very set in their ways. I think it would take a major revolution for that to really happen. And I think the way things are set up right now, I think, no, that's not going to happen, at least not anytime soon. But, you know, we have been shown an example that, hey, it's all out here if you want to do it. And I was like, there is no more excuses.
Yeah, no. I just hope that this isn't the last one of these all-in shows that we see. And I just hope that we get more shows like this. We get more entertainment, and we get more stuff that is compelling for us to watch as fans.
I would highly agree with you on that.
Yes. Well, I think Roger, I think we're getting the go home signal from the producer over here.
Yeah. So I think we should wrap it up.
We well, I guess let's try that again. Well, Roger, I think we're getting the go home signal.
All right. Well, let's wrap this up.
All right. Well, I'm Kevin Wood.
I'm Roger Adams.
Thank you for joining us here at the Bingo Hall in Parts Unknown.
Well, you know, the next time you see us at the Bingo Hall, we'll be right next to the two long-haired old ladies. All right.
Well, all right.
All right.
Have a good night, folks.
All right. Until next time.